I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your history in Scientology, starting with how old you were when you got in.
I first started in Scientology in May 1978, my first course. I remember writing on my check sheet, May 1978, I was 14 years old.
Okay. And then you became a member of the staff and then Sea Org?
Yes, I first started on staff at the Bellevue Mission up next to Seattle, Washington. And so I was staffed there for a little bit. And then shortly after my 16th birthday, I joined the Sea Organization, 31 October 1979.
Okay. Could you tell us about your primary jobs in the church over the years, the sort of one or two that occupied most of your career in Scientology?
I was in the Watchdog Committee, and I started in the Watchdog Committee in October of 1991. And even though there were a few different times when I got removed, but I ended up back in the Watchdog Committee. That's where I spent the majority of my time, and I was there until Thanksgiving Day 2002.
Okay. And what did you do? What did that entail, that work?
I started as the Watchdog Committee member for Celebrity Centers, and I was on that for 4 years as a dedicated job, and then I added different other sectors that I was responsible for. But that was my first appointment in the Watchdog Committee, and that's what I was on for the most amount of time.
And for the layperson, can you describe what the Watchdog Committee is and what its role?
Okay, it's the top of the Church of Scientology International. It's responsible for the Watchdog Committee is broken down into various sectors of Scientology. Like there's the Association for Better Living and Education, and that's a whole sector of Scientology that covers Applied Scholastics, Narconon Criminon, and the Way to Happiness Foundation. That's one thing. I held that position for at one point for a year. There's Scientology Missions, which are the little groups that are all over the world. That's called Scientology Missions International, and there's a Watchdog Committee member responsible for that whole sector of Scientology. And so this is broken down into probably 12, 15, depends on however the organization is set up, but there was generally about 12 sectors of Scientology. And Celebrity Centers is one. And then there's several others that sectors that I had held over the years. But you're basically the top of management, and you're responsible for seeing that the management of that sector is done.
Give us a quick description of how you left. You came to leave the Church of Scientology, or the staff of the church.
Okay. Well, I was on the Rehabilitation Project force in Florida, and there's several things that kind of led up to it, because I was really, by the time I really wanted to leave management because it was insane. The whole environment was, David Miscavige was calling us into SPs all the time, and all the dispatches coming down were just really nasty. And he was saying that he was going to strip down the whole base, which had probably upwards of, they say in their advertising on the internet, that it was up to 1,000 people or something like that. I don't know that, but probably it's around 700 that I think. But anyway, he was going to strip it down to 35 people, and that they were going to just basically offload all of INT. And Watchdog Committee, we were taken off of all external lines. Executive strata was taken off all management lines. And I don't know why this isn't noticed by Scientologists, but anyway, they don't exist. They're not functioning. He would have these events and pull some guys out to go as little puppets, up there on the event, and then back to cleaning out the sewer or whatever when they came back. But it's just all a big fat facade, and what was really going on was really bad. So I just wanted off the INT base, and so I ended up getting sent to our Rehabilitation Project force in Clearwater. And then from there, I tried to give it a go, but the program itself is just nutty. And I wrote reports saying, I don't know why we're doing this, this, and this, and this, because it violates everything that I know about standard tech. And apparently, you know, it was just a big issue about, I don't even want to get into it, but it was a big issue about it should stay the way it is. And so I knew that there wasn't going to be, I was not going to get off that program. And then plus, there's what's called the truth rundown, where if you have any negative things that you have said to other people or whatever, that gets recorded, and then you go into a confessional and you find out what crimes you committed before you had the thought or made the statement that was, you know, critical. And then from there, you find the evil purpose behind that, and you go until you realize that was just all wrong, and you've discovered the truth. Well, I couldn't get beyond the fact that I observed what I observed, and I will not change that. And there is no amount of confessionals that are going to change what I saw. And one of the things that that I realized was, for many years I had been rationalizing utter insanities. I had been somehow making it right and okay in my mind that certain things were going on, like him hitting these people or whatever, because he's got so much on his lines. You know, maybe what they did was really horrible. I don't know, but I was somehow making it okay. But it's not okay. And so when I realized, as my personal thing that I was doing is rationalizing insanities, I no longer did that. So when I saw what I saw, there it was, plain as day, and no one's going to tell me that that didn't occur. So because I was not changing, I was told I was going to get an SP declare, or because I was disaffected. And I found out, I wasn't supposed to find out, but I did find out. And I flapped about that. Like, I told my husband, my now husband, you know, if I'm going to be put out on the street, I want you to go with me. And we made a whole plan and stuff like that. And we did leave. But that was after 2 months of being separated and put under 24-hour watch, rice and beans, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know, extensive security checking and all this kind of stuff. And then finally we left on the 1st of March, 2005.
Can you tell us why people do not step in and stop these beatings or defend themselves?
Because you can, number one, he's got an entourage of his loyal executives standing all around him. But number two, he has the ability and power to put you out on the street, or send you to the RPF, or, you know, ban you from ever doing higher levels in Scientology. And, you know, he's just got the ultimate power in the church to do whatever he wants to your life. And that means that he can separate you from family. He can, it's just quite painful, you know, that what he's capable of and what he has done on numerous occasions. And it's pretty devastating and heartbreaking, and you don't want to have any part of it. And if it comes up that you have any sort of a disagreement with him, then you're going to be, you know, under confessionals. You're going to be a target of an attack from him until, you know, you're sufficiently handled one way or the other, either out or on his side. And it's just the type of personality. It's so unpredictable, and it's unsafe. When I was in the RPF in Clearwater, the person who was reading my folder, and the stuff that I was saying was going on, she was shocked about, because she wasn't from international management, and she says, "You should write a knowledge report." I was like, Oh yeah, right. I might as well just write my death certificate. You know, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in a million years. You know, I did write one after I got out and send it to the organization in July 2006, hoping that maybe there would be some sort of a change and stuff like that, which there wasn't. Apparently, a lot of people who have come out since said it went from bad to worse. But I did try to handle it on those channels, but there isn't any handling it internally, you know. And also, when I got out, I didn't, you know, pipe up about the abuse on an immediate basis, because I mean, it's known what happens with critics of Scientology. I am critical of a person who is using his power to abuse people. He is no religious leader. You cannot call yourself a religious leader as you beat people, as you confine people, as you rip apart families. It's a dichotomy of what a religion is meant to be. It is completely opposed to what it is that I joined, and so many of the other people that are there, working for what they think is right. You know, and I don't care what people believe. It doesn't matter to me. Where it crosses the line is when you put a big fat wedge in between family members and loved ones and stuff, and when you start abusing human rights, especially when you are supposedly the big spokespeople for human rights and stand up for human rights, when absolutely the opposite is what's actually occurring. So it was not safe to ever jump in or fight back or whatever. Absolutely not, because you had ultimate control of your destiny.
You say you witnessed David Miscavige physically attacking Mike Rinder in the same room? The same
Yeah, just over, like probably 3 feet past where I just described that occur, on a different day. I think that was 2002. I think I took note of Mike Rinder. Yeah, no, 2000. It was 2000. And what happened was he came up the ramp and straight over to Mike's desk. Mike had his back facing out because his desk was facing the wall when you would come in. So he didn't expect it at all, because he just came around the corner and then grabbed Mike around the neck and was holding him around the neck and choking him. And, you know, his chair is all turning around and stuff like that, and he's like, what the hell? And his face is all turning purple, and he's like just really mad. Who knows what it was about, what prompted it? Who knows? You can never figure out from 1 second to the next what the guy was going to do or how he was going to react. And I've got a zillion examples of that. But however, that's what he did with Mike, and knocked him down. Like, once he was done strangling him, he brought him down in the chair onto the ground and toppled over.
Are there any other of these attacks of note that you want to share with us?
One of them was to Ray Midoff. It was the first one that I observed, so it had some impact on me personally. We were up in the RTC conference room. That one was in 1995. And it was Guillaume Lesev, Ronnie Miscavige, which is David Miscavige's brother, myself, and I believe Mark Ingber, and I don't know who else, but we were called up because he was in the middle of some sort of meeting that he was having with Ray Midoff, which wasn't going well. And he called us to come up to the conference room. And we came in, and I was kind of also being the deputy commanding officer of CMOINT at that time, because we were in the middle of a few things, and I held several sectors at that point. So that's why I was there. And Ray Midoff was sitting at the conference room table. I showed you a picture of that table. He was sitting at the table, kind of like at attention, like this, and as David was ranting and raving about something that he had done. And while I was there and observed it, and those other people observed it too, he came over and with an open hand hit him across the head 3 times, like hard. And you know, he just sat there and took it. He probably had him sitting down at attention instead of standing up at attention, because he's like 2 feet taller than him or something. I don't know exactly, but he literally couldn't defend himself or anything. He just had to sit there and take it. and could have defended himself, didn't defend himself, and that's a shame. But then David takes out his wallet and starts throwing dollar bills at him. Here, I hit you, just take some money, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then he takes off his tag and he breaks his tag, chairman of the board, he breaks his tag and he says, I'm going to quit, I'm done with this, is, you know. And he starts going through the office. He kicked a chair into Ray, and, you know, went around his office like, you know, knocking things over and stuff like that. And I went, ooh, damn.
I know, as a person who headed up the Celebrity Center network over many years, can you give us some insight into any special relationships that Mr. Miscavige may have had with any particular Scientology celebrities?
Well, apparently Tom Cruise and David Miscavige are best friends. David Miscavige was the best man at Tom Cruise's wedding, and in the International Association of Scientologists event, which is all over the internet, and which I was still in to observe, David Miscavige said that Tom Cruise is the most dedicated Scientologist he knows, and Tom Cruise said that David Miscavige is the best leader, the leader of leaders, and I should know because I've met them all. The quote is on the internet and can be looked up. So they're very close, obviously. They were saluting each other, shaking their hands, hugging, and he got a medal of something or other. Anyway, so I don't know. They're apparently extremely close. I don't know if Tom Cruise knows about the abuse. If he does, then he's supporting a complete psychopath and is supporting the abuse and what David Miscavige is doing. Or if he doesn't know, then he's a big fat dupe who is being, you know, he's sucking on his power and using Tom to get more power and position for himself. And either way, it's really sad because I think Tom is very talented, and Ellen Hubbard talks about the fact that celebrities become a magnet for this type of a person, for you know, for sociopaths or antisocial personalities. They're like a magnet for them, and he's obviously not seeing that, or he's in agreement with it. I don't know which way it is, but it's unfortunate.
During your time at the upper levels of management in Scientology, did you have the occasion to look at internal statistics on how well Scientology was doing and how it was growing?
Yes.
The church says those statistics are on a constant upward trajectory. Does that agree with what you witnessed, what you saw?
No.
Okay, how so?
I mean, the events are all geared toward, you know, unprecedented expansion and leaps and bounds and all this kind of stuff, and everyone is like applauding. It's not the case. Just look at your local organization, and that tells you the state of the Church of Scientology. Okay, so maybe some are a little bit more expanding than others, but generally just look around you. And you think maybe you're the only one that's not expanding, you're the only one that's struggling. It's not the case. Anyway, the international statistics, I won't begin to try to tell you figures because I'm out of date on that, but we were constantly trying to figure out specific date coincidences of why did we go into a long-term dive on statistics starting in the very late 80s. And we had all sorts of different reasons, but none of them remedied it, so I don't know. It is not unprecedented expansion, the fastest growing religion on earth, in my opinion.
And so overall, if you were looking at it as a line, would it be going slowly down, gradually down? How would it?
Yeah, a continual downtrend.
Okay. Is there a name for that in science?
There's certain statistics, that main statistics like public inflow, gross income, value of services delivered, well done auditing hours, like the number of hours of processing occurring and things like that. Okay. Student points.
Tell us about your feelings regarding the disconnection policy as applied and enforced by David Miscavige. Do you think it's applied correctly?
No, it's not applied correctly remotely. Okay, disconnection in the church. And they say that it doesn't exist, which is the biggest, fattest lie imaginable. And the fact that they separate families and put a wedge between a family member and their loved ones has got to be one of the biggest crimes the church can commit and has committed. And it's one of the reasons why they have people attacking them, because that doesn't go away. Your love for your family does not go away. Okay, the reason why that existed in the first place is because of a policy letter written by L. Ron Hubbard with regards to a suppressive person. And the description of a suppressive person, if anyone wants to look it up on the internet or whatever, the perfect example is the description of the profile of a sociopath. That gives a really good description, and that also describes David Miscavige to a T. That type of person will crush you, will take pleasure in seeing you fail, will make any gains that you have less, will destroy your life, and will put you in an insane asylum, will do anything to suppress and make you less, demoralize you, whatever. Anyway, there's a long history. But anyway, just needless to say, that has separated so many people from their loved ones because it puts you in a status with the church where you can no longer speak to anyone who's still affiliated with the church. So you've lost all your friends, any family members still in, and everything like that. And that is devastating.
In your early time in Scientology, what were you thinking in terms of what you wanted to accomplish as a Scientologist?
You're just on a crusade. You know, you're on a crusade to help people. Scientology believes that you are a spiritual being and that you've lived before and you'll continue to live, and that they have the answers to all sorts of different questions, and that you can increase your ability as a spiritual being to become free. And so I wanted to be part of the crusade to accomplish that.
Okay. And you left in, what was the year?
It was the 1st of March, 2005.
Okay. Why did you leave?
There's somebody in charge of the Church of Scientology right now named David Miscavige, who is an extremely abusive, tyrannical leader who is turning the Church of Scientology, or has turned the Church of Scientology, into what I classify as a cult, and something that I didn't want to have anything more to do with because he's hurting people. And the things that I have observed over time while I was in the executive positions was so far from what I ever envisioned Scientology to be and the world that we wanted to create. We were there to fight for human rights and everything like that, and I mean, we got the worst human rights violations happening right under our nose. I could not rationalize it anymore. And to me, it was severe enough for me to leave. I never did think I would leave. It wasn't even in the cards for a long time, and I was willing to endure almost anything. I mean, and I have over the years. I mean, we had unbelievable schedules or whatever, but it was all a crusade, and there's a lot of really good people there, but they're being hurt, and I can tell you specifics about that. But what made me decide to leave was the fact that I wasn't going to be able to handle it there. He's locked in as the head of the Church of Scientology. He's got every legal thing at his disposal and so on. And if you are in any way opposed to him or whatever, you can just be out on the street. And for someone who was there for 27 years and I had no other life, being put out on the street isn't really an option. But it became an option because there was no other way to handle it.
You've spoken about witnessing more than one instance in which David Miscavige jumped across the conference table at people. Can you tell us where that occurred, describe the room, and then describe the incident for us?
Okay. The Watchdog Committee has an office, a really kind of like a big office, where there's like a 12-foot conference room table or something like that, kind of in the center, and then all around are little cubicles where people, like I was, the Celebrity Center sector is here, you know, the Sea Organization sector is here, the Scientology Mission sector is here, and it's just all around. We have our own little spaces. And where David would sit is on one side of the conference room table, and then there's a big long table, and everybody else would sit on the other side. Well, my little cubby or cubicle was directly across from where David was sitting and where the crowd was, but I wasn't always involved in every meeting because he would have meetings with marketing people, or he'd have meetings with the compilations personnel or finance people or whatever. Just he used that conference room a lot. So it didn't always have to do with me, and I wasn't sitting at the table all the time, but I would be there in the cubby. So I was always witnessing these things. And on one occasion, it was a marketing meeting, and I'm sitting in my cubby, and all of a sudden, David jumps up onto the table and across the table and at Jeff Hawkins, who was a marketing manager at the time, and knocked him over, grabbed him around the neck, and was strangling him and pulling out his clothes. He had buttons popping off his shirt and change rolling. It was into my cubby, I mean, because it was right directly across from him, so it was just all happening right at my feet. And, you know, I gathered up the change and gathered up the buttons and stuff like that and returned them to Jeff. But it was all of a sudden, and it was just a surprise. And Jeff was completely shocked. Like, you know, it was mortifying to see that. Because it wasn't like, okay, now I'm going to come over and kick your ass. It was just all of a sudden up on the table, across, you know, knocking his chair over and, you know, and struggling with him.
Like a tackle across the table?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know why. I have no idea. I mean, I don't know if Jeff does either, because it was just a surprise out of the blue. I'm sure he said something that he didn't appreciate or something. I don't know why, but there's no justification for it anyway. That was one instance, and then yes.
And did the meeting continue right then?
Yeah.
As if nothing had happened.
As if nothing had happened. He got back up, and I don't know if he was taken out of the room. I don't remember exactly, but the meeting continued.
And there was another instance that you recalled for us before.
Wendell Reynolds. It was there was about 4 people sitting on the other side of the room. It was Wendell Reynolds in the center, and then Mark Yeager, Mark Ingber, Guillaume Lesève, and those are the ones I recall. And it was about finance and some other matters. But what happened was Wendell was sitting there, and it was again where David just jumped up onto the table and then lunged at him and knocked his chair over backwards, and you know, and then he's standing over him while Wendell is just laying on the ground with his chair laying, you know, down, and he said, "Get up and stop acting like you're hurt," and you know, which then he sat back up and the meeting continued. But it's just another instance of that occurring.
Okay. Same room, there was another physical attack on Mr. Mark Yeager.
Mark Yeager. I was sitting in my cubby, and I could hear just coming up there's a ramp, and then you end up into the WC conference room. And up the ramp comes David Miscavige, full steam, bang, 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 sounded like an elephant coming in. You could tell he was pissed. So I got up from my cubby and came to the center to find out, you know, something's going to go down, so I wanted to know what it was. So, and be kind of like at attention, because he's obviously going to take something up with us or something. He's just really pissed. So he came in and then went around the WC table till he found, like he was looking for for Jaeger until he found Jaeger. He found him and he went straight after him, and he grabbed the front of his shirt and stuff like that, and he threw him, pushed him back against, we had, at that time we had set up this whole speaker system and stuff on the side of the WDC conference room. So he pushed him into that, and he fell over and stuff was falling over, and he's like laying on the ground, and Shelley, his wife, was saying, Dave, Dave, you know, like to try to calm him down a little bit. Meek didn't do anything, didn't stop him, but, you know, she did do that. And so, you know, and so he kind of like rattled him. And then, I mean, there are several different instances with Mark, but that was the one that you're referring to right now, where he came in and he got shoved against those bookcases, you know, the speaker system and that are up on these bookcases, and toppled over.
What was the project that they were working on at the time that required the audio equipment and everything?
If I have the year correct, I'm not sure, but the reason why we had the speakers set up was because we were listening to the Joy of Creating album being made, which was being made around that time. I think it was, I don't know, early 2000s. And so that's the reason why we had it set up, and we had a video camera there, I mean a video player there also, because it was event stuff that was all getting prepared, and so we were seeing the rushes of that, and we were listening to the songs as they were being completed for the Joy of Creating.
Beyond the physical attacks you described at the hands of David Miscavige, were there any other abuses that you witnessed or experienced?
Yeah, like for example, there's a laid out technology by L. Ron Hubbard on how to do certain things, and he is what is called a squirrel. And he would do things like, there's a program called the running program, and that entails somebody going around a pole that brings you up to cause, you know, a viewpoint of cause, whatever. Anyone can have their viewpoint of that or whatever. But what he did is, when he got really mad with the Watchdog Committee members and the executive strata, is we were all sent to go run around a pole. And this is, you know, in the summer and stuff like that. And we are all supposed to have some sort of a group realization of why we were such criminals. And we were there for hours. And because part of the problem was one person who's out and didn't agree with it and thought it was squirrel kept being asked, okay, what did you realize? And he kept saying nothing, and we're just saying, please just say anything so we can get off of this thing, you know. And he was like, no, this is squirrel, and I realized nothing. And then when I was on the decks, I observed that he had people still doing that. And we're talking in their hard shoes and uniforms with ties, middle of the summer, going around this tree, around and around and around, and somebody was in a wheelchair and being pushed around this thing. You know, I don't know, I couldn't tell exactly who it was, but I was working on building a building that was close by to where that running track was, so I could see them, and I was like, thank God I'm not over there anymore. But they're still being put through that abuse. That's a good example.
I know he didn't voice why he launched into these things, but do you have an idea what the triggers were that made Mr. Miscavige angry?
I had no idea. You know, it's so unjustifiable. I mean, an example is like one time something didn't go right on renovations, so he called up a bunch of people that had anything to do with it, like from the landlord office, and he said, someone's going to the RPF about this. So he just set this meter up and had people just sitting on it, not even being asked questions, you know, and he was trying to get someone to confess to something or other, and finally he just tells his RTC staff, Religious Technology Center staff that are junior to him, to take away this person named Jeray. Short red hair, her hair is about as long as mine. The next time I saw her, she came off the RPM Rehabilitation Project Force, and her hair was down to her waist because she was gone for, you know, I don't know, 3 years or something like that.
And what is...
For who knows what. She wasn't like the guilty one necessarily. She wasn't. It was just someone's going to go, and good, take her away because she spoke up. One time I was in a meeting, and he had asked a question about why did we make a decision for a certain way. The person responsible for that wasn't answering, so I said, well, we discussed it in the committee, and what we were thinking was blank. He said, And then at the end of what I said, he says, I hate you. I hate you more than I hate Kathy Rinder, and you know how much I hate her. It's so left field. I had no idea what he was talking about. It's just random.
You describe people going to the RPF, or the Rehabilitation Project Force. Can you describe what that is?
The Rehabilitation Project Force? It's supposed to be a correction facility. It is a place where you go and you are supposed to be able to study 5 hours a day on a correction program to handle whatever you had done wrong, to address with the technology whatever it is that you had done wrong. I've been on it a few times. And that program, it's hard to describe, but it's like a slave labor type of program where the first couple times I just worked 2 years around, 4 hours sleep a night, 2 years straight, got almost zero enhancement because we had renovations projects we were trying to complete. One of the times the latest time I was in Florida, and we did have enhancement time, but what you do is you're under watch, you're under guard, you have no communication lines to outside family. You have within the church, you're meant to call everybody sir, but you are not supposed to have any sort of contact with people. And you do renovations projects. And while I was in Florida, we worked at the mill where we were building furniture and stuff like that. And a lot of times we were used to build sets for events, and we would go off a study and work around the clock in order to do that, to make timetables and everything like that. But that's what it is. And it doesn't. We were just here a couple months ago and saw somebody who was on the RPF for 9 years at that time. I've been out for 4 years, so he has now been on the RPF for 13 years. The reason why he got sent to the RPF is because when somebody put him on the E-meter, he had what's called a dirty needle. He was sent to the RPF for that. You would think that the Rehabilitation Project Force would correct somebody within a few months. Well, obviously they're using these people for something else.